Today we are pitting the new Intel Arc G3E, specifically from the MSI Claw 8 EX AI Plus, up against a AMD Z1 Extreme, an AMD Z2 Extreme, and an AMD Max Plus 395. And we're specifically going to be looking at one game just because there's been a lot of benchmarks, and also I don't have a 395, so huge shout out to our member Connor for providing these numbers for me. So there's quite a lot to cover here, so let's just crack on with it. But first, a word from our sponsor.
It's time for me to pay the 128KB bills for today's totally impartial video sponsor, and that's HEX Gaming. And today we're lucky enough to introduce the brand new HEX Gaming Ultimate Pro controller for PS5 and PC. And this really has some tricks up its sleeve if you're serious about your controllers. Now look, we all know that the PS5 controller is a really cool bit of kit. If you play competitive shooters though, you need those back buttons and faster triggers. And the problem is that most official Pro options for PC or PlayStation drop some of the great features that are in the DualSense controller that we all know and love. And this is where the HEX Gaming Ultimate Pro completely separates itself from the competition. It's a premium custom built powerhouse that combines all the best features of the PS5 controller with the premium spec upgrades that we expect in a Pro controller. With the dual mode trigger system, you can instantly swap between full PS5 adaptive triggers for your cinematic single player campaigns to clicky micro switch hair triggers for competitive FPS matches. It drops the trigger travel distance down to a tiny 1.5mm, giving you an instantaneous mouse click response. It gives you a massive advantage in any FPS games. And then of course there are the sticks. They've packed this with advanced Hall effects joysticks that means magnetic sensors with zero physical friction and absolutely zero stick drift. But HEX Gaming takes it a step further. They feature a unique hardware-level drift fix calibration toolbox. Using this included tool, you can physically adjust the axis deviations on the board itself, fine-tuning your stick circularity and responsiveness to perfectly match your aim. And in case that wasn't enough, HEX also include 8 interchangeable stick toppers to allow you to find your favourite mix of concave or domed sticks. You're also getting a premium anti-slip grip, 4 perfectly placed remappable back buttons, and 6 onboard profiles with an LED indicator so you can swap layouts on the fly. Plus, they throw in 8 interchangeable thumbsticks, a premium carry bag, and a charging cable right in the box. I love that I can be playing a story-driven game with full immersive feedback and then just flick 2 switches on the back and instantly jump into a sweaty FPS game and lose hard because, let's be honest, I suck at them. So, if you want an ultimate zero compromise Pro controller for your PS5 and PC, then this is it. Hit the link in the description to check out the HEX Gaming Ultimate Pro, and by doing so, you'll be directly supporting the channel. And of course, massive thanks to HEX Gaming for sponsoring this video.
Now there is one huge thing I need to caveat here, is that our MSI Claw EX sample that we had, it's gone back now, we were only borrowing it from MSI, was an engineering sample, and it only had RAM speeds up to 7,400 megatransfers per second. Now, MSI have confirmed this was an engineering sample thing, and retail units will be at the full speed of 8,500 megatransfers, but I want to tell you that because it will directly affect the results we're getting here. However, if you've ordered something like the ONEXFLY 3, which also has the G3E Extreme, that comes in 2 different RAM configs, 7,400 or 8,500. So this might be quite beneficial for you if you've chosen the slower speeds of a ONEXFLY 3 G3 Extreme, then you might get an idea of the performance you'll get. And of course, when we get a G3 Extreme that's got 8,500 megatransfers per second RAM, I will do like comparisons against whether the RAM speed matters or not. But anyway, enough waffling, let's crack on with it. So Cyberpunk's 2077, 720p or 800p, we are going 10 watts. Low preset with no upscaling. And the first thing you'll see with a lot of these, I have included 1% lows for the Z1 Extreme, the Z2 Extreme, and the G3 Extreme. However, Connor didn't provide me that information for the 395, so I've only gone with the average performance there. And immediately, you can see that the 395 is on par with the Z1 Extreme, which is crazy, at 19 frames per second on average at 10 watts. Going up to the Z2 Extreme gives us 22, so not that much performance gain over the Z1 Extreme or even the 395, But look at the Intel Arc G3 Extreme, a whopping 42 FPS. That's a 121% increase over the Z1 Extreme and the 395. Bear in mind, obviously, a negative percentage increase looks less, you know, like minus 54% going from the G3 Extreme to the 395. But of course, in terms of like how much performance gain you're getting by an Intel G3 Extreme is actually 121%. And going from a Z2 Extreme device like the Xbox Ally X, which we tested here, or any of the other Z2 Extremes, which will be pretty much similar results there, is a 91% increase in performance by going to the Intel G3 Extreme. So as we can see here, the Intel G3 Extreme, as we know, at lower wattages just destroys the competition. Even a 395. 121% increase in performance. But how does that fare at 20 watts? Let's see what happens here. So at 20 watts, it's actually weird. I wasn't expecting the 395 to give less FPS than a Z1 Extreme at 20 watts. I know the 395 excels at like 30 plus watts. That's where it's like designed for, right? But still, I still expected it to outperform a Z1 Extreme at 20 watts. But there we go. So we've got 61 FPS on the 395. We've got 63 on the Z1E. We've got 67 on the Z2E, and then a massive jump up to 83 on the G3E. So the G3E is getting 32% better performance than the Z1 Extreme, 24% better performance than the Z1 Extreme, and then it's minus 26% from, you know, the 395. But actually we're getting a big jump in performance there, and this is still 20 watts, low preset, just raw performance, no upscaling or anything like that. And now here's where the gap starts closing a little bit. Once we jump up to 30 watts or 35 watts, and the only reason I'm doing this is because that's all that I can do on the Z1 Extreme. The Z1 Extreme caps out at 30 watts, so instead of doing 30 across the board, I wanted to max out, you know, these devices, obviously other than the 395, to see what the performance difference will be. And shockingly, I ran this test a few times on both the Z1 Extreme and the Z2 Extreme, but weirdly, I'm getting more performance on the Z1 Extreme than the Z2 Extreme. So the OG Ally X is actually beating out the Xbox Ally X here, which is weird, but okay. So the Z1 Extreme gets 72, the Z2 Extreme gets 70, the G3E gets 100, so we're getting about 40% increase in performance here from the Z1 and Z2E just there. But here's where the 395 starts kicking it up a notch, because now the 395 is in the lead with 105 FPS. So it's a 5% increase, and that's it. You're only getting 5% increase in performance here from a G3 Extreme at 35 watts versus a 395 at 35 watts. Pretty mental. It does change later though. So now let's stay at 720p/800p, but let's go to the high preset. Of course, no upscaling or anything. This is raw performance. And we're going from 20 watts here, mainly because I didn't test 10 watts on the G3 Extreme when I had it, and I don't have it anymore, so I can't test it. So here we're seeing the Z1 Extreme getting 39 FPS. Finally, an improvement with the Z2 Extreme at 44 FPS, but look at the jump up to the G3 Extreme, 73 FPS on average. That's nuts, isn't it? And then look at the 395 at 20 watts. It's like on par with the Z1 Extreme again. So we're basically getting 87% better performance from the G3 Extreme versus the 395 and the Z1 Extreme. That's insane, isn't it? 87% increase in performance. And even jumping from a Z2 Extreme to the G3 Extreme, we're looking at a 66% increase in performance. And when you just think about these numbers in terms of just what you're seeing on the screen in terms of frame rate, right, then imagine 40 FPS on the Z1 and Z2 Extreme, all the way up to nearly 75 FPS on the G3 Extreme. That's just raw performance, no upscaling. That's a huge uptick, like a massive uptick, obviously. And now this one actually shocked me a little bit, and this is 800p, 720p, high preset, no upscaling still, 30 watts on the Z1 Extreme, and then 35 watts for all of the other devices. And here we got 46 FPS on the Z1 Extreme, then we got 50 FPS on the Z2 Extreme. The G3 Extreme goes all the way up to 88 FPS. That's a 91% increase in performance over the Z1 Extreme and a 76% increase in performance over the Z2 Extreme. But then look at the 395. Again, it's behind the G3 Extreme. So yeah, it's just mad, isn't it? So the 395 is getting 80 FPS, and we're getting a 10% increase in performance, basically, on the G3 Extreme. Pretty nuts. But as everyone keeps telling me, I don't want to play at 800p, Andy. I just want to play at native 1200p. Don't worry, I've got you covered here because we're going to go through low and high performance as well. Native, like, so actually 1200p, it'll be 1080p on the Allies, right? But on the 395 and the MSI EX, the G3E, it will be 1200p. So kicking it off with 20 watts, low preset, no upscaling, of course, right? We're getting 36 FPS on the Z1 Extreme at 1080p. We're getting 40 FPS on the Z2 Extreme at 1080p. And then look at that jump up on the G3 Extreme. We're getting 56 FPS on average on the G3 Extreme. That's a 55% increase from the Z1 Extreme and a 40% increase from the Z2 Extreme. And look at the poor 395 down there. It's, again, right next to the Z1 Extreme. So we're getting a massive uptick in performance from the G3 Extreme at 20 watts, which we kind of all knew. We know that the G3 Extreme excels in the lower parts of the power, right? Then the 395 is just going to dominate it once you go above 35 watts. But 20 watts, the G3 Extreme is a massive leap in performance. It really, really is. But this next one is where the 395 takes a considerable lead. And now we're still on low preset. Everything's the same basically as the last one, but now we're going 30 watts on the Ally, 35 watts on the Xbox Ally X, and then, 35 watts on the G3 Extreme and the 395. So the Z1 Extreme gives us 43 FPS on average, and then the Z2 Extreme gives us 51. The G3 Extreme gives us 70, which is basically 63% more performance than the Ally, and nearly 40% more performance than the Xbox Ally X, which is mad. But now the 395 is kicking it up a gear with that higher resolution. It's letting that GPU utilization shoot up there, bringing it well into the lead with a nearly 40% lead over the G3 Extreme just here, with 96 FPS on average versus 70 FPS on average from the G3 Extreme. But remember, this is native, right? And yes, this is low preset. We will go to high in a minute. But 70 FPS on low, no upscaling. I think the G3 Extreme here is a massive improvement over, the Z1 Extreme and the Z2 Extreme. 60 and 40% better than the Z1E and the Z2E here. That's huge. It really, really is. But now finally we're seeing that 395 like kicking it up a notch. And I assume we'll see the same when we go up to high settings. So let's check that out. But curiously, that doesn't seem to be the case here. Weird. Don't know what happened here. Again, I only got given these numbers from Connor, our member. Big thank you as well. Thank you. But, obviously I don't know how many times he ran the benchmarks and stuff. But this one on the 395 is a bit strange. It's, again, more in line with the Z1 Extreme. So this is native, no upscaling, but now on the high preset at 20 watts, and the Z1 Extreme is getting 24 FPS, which would just be unplayable. The Z2 Extreme, the Xbox Ally X, is just under 30 FPS at 29 FPS. Again, I would deem that unplayable. And then we've got the G3 Extreme here at 38 FPS, which I would deem playable, absolutely. And then you've got the 395, which is at 25 FPS, again in line with the Z1 Extreme. So we're getting nearly a 60% uptick in performance from the Z1 Extreme to the G3 Extreme, right? And then we're seeing a 30% increase from the Z2 Extreme to the G3 Extreme. And of course, basically another 60% increase over the 395 there, which is nuts. But what happens when we kick the maximum wattage in, right, across the devices, other than the 395, obviously it can do more, but in line with these devices, right? So the Z1 Extreme, we're now moving up to 30 watts for that one, and then 35 watts for everything else. The Z1 Extreme gets 28 FPS. The Z2 Extreme gets 33. The G3 Extreme gets 46. And now you can see again the 395 has just kicked up a notch at 52, but it's not that big of a margin increase, really. Remember, this is raw performance, no upscaling or anything like that. And again, the Intel G3 Extreme can utilize XeSS 3 here, like machine learned upscaling and frame gen capabilities, which is actually really surprising. I highly recommend you go check out my in-depth video on the MSI Claw EX if you haven't seen that one, because I give my opinions and all that kind of stuff with gameplay examples and more charts as well. So check that out. But here we're seeing a 65% increase in performance from the Z1 Extreme to the G3 Extreme, which is just massive. We've got a 40% increase over the Z2 Extreme to the G3 Extreme. And then the 395 is only in the lead by 13% more performance than the G3 Extreme. So again, whilst the 395 will outperform it on many games at 35 watts compared to the G3 Extreme, it is so close that if you are actually planning on wanting a high-end, like a powerful device, you know, and you don't want to spend out on a 395 or a 388 or whatever, right? Then the G3 Extreme is really looking like the winner here, like in terms of efficiency and just performance here. Bear in mind, again, it uses that Intel XeSS 3 and frame gen. So machine learned stuff, that's no joke. That kicks the frame rate like absolutely mad. Like it really does. But the other thing we need to take into consideration here as well is, like I said, all of my tests here with the G3 Extreme, the MSI Claw 8 EX AI, whatever it's called, right, has the slower RAM. So we will see better performance again, marginal at that. So maybe a 5% increase in performance, but we will see a better performance from the retail units that have 8,500 megatransfers rather than the 7,400 megatransfers I was testing. So just bear that in mind. So it might actually pull the G3 Extreme even closer up to the 395 by having that retail like RAM, right? But again, once I get my hands on with the retail unit and other devices, I will test them and I will see what the RAM differences are to see if there is any at all, right? But overall here, this is all the tests I've done against all these devices. And I think it's really promising. Again, it just shows that the G3 Extreme is really a generational leap in terms of efficiency here. And honestly, you cannot like joke about XeSS 3, seriously. I'm one for, on the AMD handhelds, just running things natively at 800p because it looks great. No upscaling. With upscaling, 800p looks trash, but natively, 800p looks brilliant. So I'm always in favor of that. But the G3 Extreme looks like you're actually going to be able to play natively, high settings, throw on some XeSS if the game supports it, and it's going to be a really, really good experience. We will, fingers crossed, hopefully be getting another Lent unit from MSI, a retail unit soon, so stick around for, you know, that. I'm also going to release a video soon, maybe next week, about more games that I've tested when I had time with the sample previously with the Claw EX, right? And I have also ordered a ONEXFLY 3. So when that arrives in however many months, we'll see that on the channel as well. So anyway, make sure you become a member and you get to chat to us over on our private Discord. Let me know any thoughts you have about all of these results just here and which device you would be leaning to. Are you going to upgrade from a Z1 Extreme or a Z2 Extreme or a Steam Deck even, or you know, maybe you're going to downgrade from a 395 because you want something that's more efficient. I don't know. Let me know all your stuff. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.